representative of the Johns Creek community.
Thank you. I moved into this city April of 2017, earlier stated. Within 2 months, somebody recruited me for HOA. And I went up the ladder, treasurer, associate treasurer, all the way up to vice president. Then what happened, COVID happened, we closed our swimming pool. Some 25 residents got together and said, we're going to sue you now. Immediately the president resigned and nobody wanted to become the president. And I was called there to the meeting and I was fully ready to go and support the next guy, whoever it is, to become the president. Long story short, I became the it. See, these are kind of things, when you have service in your background, you don't mind, you have to step up. In my military days, they tell us, if you take one step back, the enemy comes one step forward. And they don't take part of Alabama, they don't take part of Alaska, they take USA. So that is the ethos which I come from. Second, I want to tell you that when this drug addiction happened, when I heard about this, one girl who OD'd herself in one of the high schools, that is the time when I found that my foundation was doing a really good work in steering these people clear of those kind of habits and missteps. Looking at my career of last 16 years here and 25 years in this place, I've always been a mentor. I've always volunteered my services in my church or anywhere. And I will continue to do whether I'm on the council or not. Thank you.
Okay, stay there. So the next one. If elected, what are the top 3 things you want the City Council to tackle in January and why?
I think I would like to cement certain policy matters. If you look 1.5 years back, Buckhead was a prestigious address. Now it's in the dumps. Even the homeless people are leaving that place. Public safety is crucial to any activity which happens in Johns Creek. My first priority is to make sure that any measures which are anti-police, which unfairly place burden on them, are not going to happen. This is what my priority is. I don't want the police to step out of the car and look over their shoulder, because the police is also very smart people are there in that. They have mortgages, they have children. They can always, when you call 911, they can come after 5 minutes when somebody has already cleaned up your house of your all possessions and possibly do worse. That is my number 1 priority when I go there. I want to make sure public safety remains number 1 key in my book. The next thing is, I'm a small businessman. I'm very keen on budgets. I cannot afford to postpone a solution or choose a solution. Which problem I will act on. That is something which I feel town center is going to need that kind of expertise. The town parks and recreation, those need my kind of input. Also, the quality of life. See, once you're in business, you're always innovating or you perish. So therefore, I also believe I will certainly have significant input in quality of life in Johns Creek. Thank you.
Cassandra, if elected, what are the top 3 things you would want the City Council to tackle in January and why?
So, we as a city have invested a lot of money into a strategic plan. Many of you, I'm sure, were a part of those discussions. We have a 5-point plan in which we want to see the city move forward. You give us our marching orders, and what I have heard a lot about is that we need to fix our aging and failing infrastructure. When we incorporated and became a city, we took on all of the burdens that came along with that. Fulton County decided that after Sandy Spring, they were no longer going to fund some of the projects that made our city work, such as our stormwater utilities. So making sure that we continue to move forward, that after the assessment is done, that we don't start back talking about what's next and hold up for another 5 years, but that we're able to actually make progress on the things that we've already decided. Making sure that town center becomes a reality for us, and making sure that the people who live in Johns Creek have safe pedestrian places that they can live and play and walk, move around. The traffic is a part of that. And so I think the city has done an effective job laying out for us already what our plan is and our strategy is moving forward. And it would cost us more money and more time for us to deviate too far from what we've already spent so much time discussing. So my top 3 priorities would be listed there on the city's website to move forward with what I believe the vast majority of the community has already decided. And let's not start back kicking the can down the road, but let's get some things done.
Okay, we're going to carry on that theme. The next questions are related to town centre. I'm going to read 3 of them because they're all related. How do you feel? What are your plans to address the proposed town centre? What do you envision for the Johns Creek Town Centre? How will it give us a reason to stay and do things in Johns Creek instead of driving to other towns to eat, etc.? Paint a picture for us. Describe a day in Johns Creek that someone might take at the future town centre. What would they see and do?
Okay, those are some lengthy questions, but let's see if I can get it all wrapped up in one response. So I envision Johns Creek Town Center as a place that's envied throughout the state of Georgia. When they're talking about Johns Creek, they're not only talking about our good schools and our safety and our affluent lifestyle, but they're also talking about, wow, have you visited Town Center? They have some wonderful, have you just seen it? I don't know what it's going to look like. We have a plan, we have an idea of doing something great in our city. So we've already begun to put together the infrastructure as far as the shell. What that will look like ultimately, not even the city who has staff to work on this has determined that. But what we do know is that it will be an opportunity for Johns Creek to continue to grow and to pour back into our infrastructure by building up our economy. At some point, we're going to have to decide, do we want to continue to look at borrowing money through special local sale tax to fix some of the issues that we have in Johns Creek, or are we looking at ways that we can self-bank ourselves? And so I see the town center as an opportunity for us to stop going to, as often anyway, to Avalon or the Forum and invest our tax dollars right here in our city where we can make the best use of it by helping to develop our own infrastructure and build new buildings that perhaps we might enjoy just as much. So yeah, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to become the apple of Georgia's eye, or should I say the peach.
All right, Bob, let me run through those again. How do you feel? What are your plans to address the proposed town centre? What do you envision for the Johns Creek Town Centre? How will it give us reason to stay and do things in Johns Creek instead of driving to other towns to eat, etc.? Paint a picture for us. Describe a day in Johns Creek that someone might take at the future town centre. What would they see and do?
My idea of town center is where a family can spend its leisure time doing things in quiet and in peace, enjoying the nature and the outdoors. Also, simultaneously, if there's an opportunity for some concert to go on or some community events to be happening there, to take part in that. This is one of the key issues when we talk of quality of life. Town center can have a great promise in this area. And I also believe, since recreation is the focus of town center, quality restaurants should be there, indoor, outdoor event spaces should be there, where people can spend hours, spend immersed in arts. And I also believe towards this, Legacy Art Center can be an active component of it. And I think this town center addresses the key issue of quality of life for most of us. And not to forget, the business it will drive and the property values it will drive up. Thank you.
Okay, stay there. We're moving on to schools. Since the Fulton County Board of Ed has zero plans to build more schools within the city of Johns Creek, and with a town centre plan of 48 units per acre, how do you maintain the quality of the schools that we have and the current class size? And related to that, many residents in Johns Creek are concerned about the high density housing in the town centre plan, which would make our schools overcrowded. What are your thoughts on this issue?
I think the answer is in the question. Yes, infrastructure will be overloaded. Look at the hospitals, the 911 response times, fire, police, all this will be overloaded. If anybody has gone to Northview or Chattahoochee High Schools, you see already the schools, people are studying in trailers. That's not exactly an ideal classroom. I believe that has happened because already the schools are overloaded, overburdened. And by the way, what you mentioned, 45 units per acre is a proposal. Town people, city people will have to decide exactly what is going to be the bricks on ground will be. So therefore, I don't believe people will agree to 45 units per acre unless there's a massive compromise somewhere. So therefore, I do not expect, my idea of having multi-unit housing in town center is just so that the businesses who come there can be financially viable, because no business would like to come and think that they will sustain themselves just on weekend traffic or some festival traffic. We as responsible people also have to make sure the business which is there to serve us also is financially viable. Thank you.
Sandra, since the Fulton County Board of Ed has zero plans to build more schools within the city of Johns Creek, and with the town centre plan of 48 units per acre, how do you maintain the quality of the schools that we have and the current class size? And the second one was, many of the residents in Johns Creek are concerned about the high density housing in the town centre plan, which would make our schools overcrowded. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, as a former school board chair, this is a very deep issue for me because I don't like trailers. I don't like children in overcrowded classrooms. I don't think they learn best that way. But I think we have to step outside of our box. I think we've already decided what this project is going to look like without giving an opportunity for creative ideas, bringing all the stakeholders to the table to have the discussion. One of the things we do often is in government is we make decisions without all of our stakeholders. You know, when we're deciding on town center and this is the concern, let's bring our administrators, our educators to the table and put in place the concept that will fit Johns Creek. So I don't think we have to build town center the way we've seen in other places. It doesn't have to have high levels of density. We can build it unique to us, to fit our needs where we are. And so I think we, first of all, need to really get a grasp of what we want to see as part of town center. And then we can start talking about and kind of seeing if it's going to overcrowd our schools or if it, but I think let's first of all start thinking outside of the box, a unique concept that fits the footprint of who we are in Johns Creek, and let's make it happen. It'll help us in the long run. And so it'll be a fun place for all of us to hang out, and whether we want to have a quiet moment or we want to turn it up, you know, we'll have the opportunity to do so. And don't take offense to that. That's just me trying to enjoy being me up here. So anyway, you know, let's give it an opportunity to develop before we decide that it's not going to work for us.
Okay, changing Would you support plans to expand on the... I get it. Would you support plans to expand the mobile mental health response team started this past year? How would you address community mental health needs?
That's a really good question because we all know that mental health is a huge part of our society. If I were to ask for a show of hand, how many of you have family members or you yourself have been personally affected by some form of mental health? We probably would all have to raise our hands if we were being truthful. So I would strongly support expansion of whether it be more psychologists, more training, more understanding of mental health, making sure that we understand that their mental health is just it's a normal part of our society. And we used to run away from it or shy away from it when you see the homeless person on the street. There are a lot of factors that may weigh into that, but a large part of that could have something to do with mental health. And so making sure that we have the right resources in place to address mental health wherever we see it, whether it's through encounter with law enforcement or just us passing by someone who's pushing a shopping cart and talking to themselves. We need the resources in our city in which we can address those issues properly.
Okay. Bob, would you support plans to expand the mobile mental health response team started this past year? How would you address community mental health needs?
This is shooting in a barrel. I'm associated in medical fraternity, and we see this all the time. There are three components of it. One is interdiction and prevention, or prevent the access of these controlled substances. Next is treating the patient. Third is aftercare, so that this person doesn't lapse back into his old habits. These are all three things which we need to be addressing at one go. But whereas the question specifically you say is in the police department you have one person who is actually there with the Narcan injection, making sure the situation doesn't deteriorate. But there is also a clinical psychologist or a registered nurse who's expert in that domain. I think it's a good first step. Going forward, we need to evaluate how serious is this need. Once we know exactly the need, then we should be able to say how adequately we can staff it. I am not per se keen to, since I come from numbers and budgeting background, I just don't want to throw numbers and money at a problem without studying it. I understand mental health can be extremely trying for parents and caregivers. But by the same token, we want to also have a correct response for it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're moving now on to the election process. I don't know whether I can combine these really. The first one, do you have faith in our election process and will you accept the results of this election?
I think I do. Georgia Assembly has stepped up to tighten the process. I feel that is a good move to restore faith in the electoral process. And can you just repeat the second part of the question?
So, yeah, I was going to ask them in chunks, so I'm going to mess up your timing, Tom, sorry. So the question was, for that one, do you have faith and will you accept the results of this election?
Absolutely.
The next one is, trust in our electoral process is critical for our democracy. Do you believe that President Joe Biden was elected fair and square?
I don't think that kind of comment is relevant to this debate. Sorry about that.
Okay. I'm just reading them. Have you served, there's another one, sorry. Have you served as an officer for any political party, and if yes, which party?
Is that a relevant question to this debate? We are talking about a non-partisan race here in this city. And I find that these are questions which, I'm sorry, I cannot answer such kind of questions.
Okay. All right. have faith in our election process and will you accept the results of this election?
Yes.
Trust in our electoral process is critical for our democracy. Do you believe that President Joe Biden was elected fair and square?
Yes.
Have you served as an officer for any political party, and if yes, which party?
Have I served as an officer?
Have you served as an officer for any political party, and if yes, which party?
What, neighborhood captain, is that an officer? I don't think so, but no. I don't think so, but I would.
Okay. All right. Moving on. I'm going to keep you up there, Cassandra. Moving on to stormwater, which may well be less contentious. With the stormwater utility currently in place, do you believe the city should bear any responsibility to either fund or participate in the funding for the dredging of retention ponds and lakes that are fed by stormwater from public roads and areas outside of subdivisions that receive the stormwater?
So as mentioned earlier, we kind of, as a city, inherited our stormwater issues, right? We were, when we were part of Fulton County took care of our stormwater for the last 16 years in Johns Creek. And this is no blame, it's just the funding to address it, we didn't appropriate it properly to address the need to address our stormwater. So we're in a position now where we're seeing issues in our backyards and in our neighborhoods when it comes to the overflow, the backup, and so many issues. So yes, I would support, and I believe it's, give me the last part of the question again, Ann, please.
Do you believe the city should bear any responsibility to either fund or participate in funding the dredging of retention ponds and lakes that are fed from stormwater outside the subdivisions that receive it?
And answer to that is yes, I do. I think that the city needs to identify in their budget how we can support neighborhoods who have to come out of their pocket to address these issues when it's at no fault of many of the neighborhoods that we're having to deal with this. Is a matter of our aging infrastructure and already aging, and then we kind of ignored it for the last 16 years. And so I do think we need to identify monies somewhere and at least plan for ways that we can support funding that.
Okay, thank you. Bob, with the stormwater utility currently in place, do you believe the city should bear any responsibility to either fund or participate in the funding of the dredging of retention ponds and lakes that are fed by stormwater from public roads and areas outside of the subdivisions that receive the stormwater?
And first, my last comment was not directed at you. I'm sorry if I came across like that. But here's what my thought on stormwater. Massive erosion. There are a lot of residents here who complain about that almost 25% of their backyard is gone. There are shallow waters breed mosquitoes. And my house is backs up to the Chattahoochee River. Every time there's a rain, I see so much pollution in the river, which supplies about almost 80% of the drinking water for the state of Georgia. Anyway, let's examine what causes this stormwater. Impervious surfaces, largely. Pervious substances, probably about 30%. But who does it? If you put a school there and you don't put a retention pond, if you build a road there and there's no drainage properly, if you build a neighborhood city which is next to you, or you put up in last few years, there were so many permits which has happened for subdivisions that there was not adequate stormwater measures. Therefore, these problems are getting exacerbated. So therefore, I think just to expect the city to step in and say, you take care of this problem, because city doesn't control the school, city doesn't control the 141 and 120 and other roads. Therefore, it is a regional problem. It is a topography problem. We are at the tail end of Appalachians. It is a state problem. So therefore, state should be approached and to deal with it as a regional problem. I have great sympathy for the last city council, which finally took a stab at this. It was a very critical step. They did that, and I'm so happy for that. But to tackle it on a long run, we need to address it as a regional issue. Thank you.
Okay, and along that same line, do you believe that we need more walking trails within the city of Johns Creek, is the first part, and then if so, would you work to ensure that the use of more pervious material to lessen stormwater runoff is used instead of concrete cement?
Thank you. Yes, that's a yes on both counts. Collie Creek is being developed with a lot of trails with pervious synthetic material, which is a good step. That is their plan. Can you repeat the second part of the question, please?
The first part was, do we want more walking trails? And the second part was, if we do, would we use pervious materials?
Absolutely. I think last 1.5 years when we are cooped up in our houses, we really missed the outdoors. Outdoors were the only saving grace we had, where we could maintain social distancing and stay safe from this notorious virus. And I think that was a lifesaver. Otherwise, many more people would be diagnosed for depression and other mental illnesses, I believe. Thank God for those trees. Thank God for the trails. Gave us abundant and for no cost. I believe that is a self-answered question. I think nobody would say no to this issue. Thank you so much.
Cassandra, do you believe we need more walking trails within the city of Johns Creek? And if so, would you work to ensure the use of more pervious materials to lessen stormwater runoff instead of concrete cement?
Yes and yes to both questions. As Bob said, and I happen to agree, one of the beautiful things I saw during COVID was the number of families that were out either riding their bicycles or walking, which suggests to me that that was something that provided some sense of normalcy to our community during a tough time. And also, we put a lot of emphasis on health and fitness and all of those things, but we need places around the city where people can actually walk it out, where we can enjoy the benefit of wholesome exercise and just enjoying the fresh air. I don't know about you, but every time I go to the doctor for my physical, they always come back and say, you need to increase your vitamin D. So I'm thinking I'm taking vitamin D pills, so I figure I need to get on somebody's walking trail. So yes, I think that it provides quality of life here in our city. And yes, I do think that we need to develop in such a way that we can protect our infrastructure from continuing to fail. And so yes to both questions.
Okay, and staying on the environmental side, can Johns Creek open a recycling centre like the one in Roswell? Yes, and I hope we do. Recycling is a huge part of being able to protect our environment and also protect our earth. And so I hope that we will look at how we can create some type of recycling initiative within our city. I know my husband and I recycle, and I love the fact that we do have a recycling bin, but I would love to see it become a full force initiative where we are actually doing it as a lifestyle, where we're learning about the benefits more and more of recycling, what things we can recycle, what things we can't recycle, partnering with organizations and neighboring communities to make sure that we're maximizing our ability to not only recycle but also to protect our planet. Got it?
I believe, I need the question again, please.
Can Johns Creek open a recycling centre like the one in Roswell?
Yes, we do need another plant like that, which is existing in Roswell and anywhere. But here is my little difference. I do not believe